Well, Miss Joy had her babies. She had 2 sweet bucklings and everyone is doing so well. If you remember, this is Joy's first time being pregnant, first time giving birth, and she was born here on the farm. She is the daughter of Penny. The day that Joy went into labor, I actually was out doing some errands in the morning, and so I wasn't super attentive to the goats in the morning. And when I got home and started doing afternoon chores, I noticed that Joy was off in this outdoor shelter. And she wasn't even like laying at the entryway of the shelter. She was kind of tucked back. And it was a beautiful day. All the other goats were outside. So I took a closer look and I noticed that her tail was, she was holding her tail really high. And so I thought, I wonder if she is starting to go into labor. I started to do some stand work with the goats. And usually when I do that, all the goats kind of wait at the door to the barn because they want to come in and get a treat. And Joy didn't come to the door, which is unusual. So after I did some work with all the other goats, I brought a little treat out to her and she wanted it and followed me into the barn. And so she came in and I gave her a little treat and then I put her in one of the barn stalls. And so I just sat with her. I like to sit with my goats if I can, and she pretty much laid there and chewed her cud. She would get up and down here and there, but I didn't notice like any sign of like mild contractions start until about 3:45. Along with some mild contractions, I just noticed like a little bit of a heavier breathing and a little bit of sound as she was breathing. She did lots of laying down, chewing her cud. She would get up and down and kind of readjust. And she did a little bit of pawing at the ground too. And so at about 4:30, she started kind of moving around a little bit, getting up and down. She was still chewing cud and yawning a little bit, but I noticed a little bit more of an uptick in her contractions. They were still pretty light and she wasn't vocalizing a ton. But then at about 5 p.m. I noticed she seemed a little bit more pushy. It seemed like she was having more intense contractions and it seemed like she was starting to kind of bear down a little bit, be a little bit more pushy, and she was starting to vocalize a little more. And so those kind of more pushy contractions, vocalizing, that lasted for about 15 minutes. It's funny because, I was kind of texting my husband Josh here and there, and the whole time before 5 o'clock, I really had no idea when the kids were going to come. But at about 5 o'clock, I remember texting him and saying, I think it's close. At 5:15, that's when the first kid was born. And so yeah, he just came right out and Joy started, she was, trying to reach back there and started to lick. And so I just brought the little buckling up beside her and she just started licking and loving on him and getting him clean and dried off. And as she was doing that, she started to have more contractions and I could see the next kid coming, and This was pretty interesting because it looked to me, and I'm pretty sure this is what happened, but as the second kid was being born, I could also see a little bit of the placenta coming out as well. And that was at about 5:20, so there was about 5 minutes between the kids. And after he was born, again, I just brought him up right next to her, and she continued to lick and go back and forth between the kids. And that was the placenta starting to come out. It didn't fully emerge for a little while, but the placenta started to come out pretty immediately after the second kid was born. She loved on those boys and got them really clean, and I did a little bit of toweling off as well. It was a little chilly that night, and it was very wet and rainy, so I gave a little bit more of a dry off, but she just kept licking and licking and licking. By that point, my husband was home. I think he didn't make either of the births, but he was there just a few minutes after. And we just kind of hung out and watched the babies find their legs and find mama's teats. And we usually like to wait until the babies start nursing. And they started to nurse by about 6. In the beginning, the boys seemed to be favoring one side of her udder. They were only nursing from the one side. And so every day I just made sure that the udder stayed balanced. And so what that meant for me was every morning I would get Joy up on the stand and I would totally milk out the side that the boys were not nursing on. And it took probably about maybe 2 or 3 days for them to start nursing from both sides, and now they're pretty good. I still will milk her out in the morning. In the evening she really doesn't have much in there at all. So yeah, they're nursing well, they're doing great, they're really, really sweet, and we just couldn't be happier.